today. We had really planned this session, and we planned to talk about mental health, developmental disabilities issues that folks brought up, which we are going to do next week. And the reason why is because COVID-19, we know a whole lot more now than we knew before. And we felt really more inclined to talk about that and talk about the new data, the new statistics. Of course, most folks know right now that African Americans are disproportionately represented among those that are infected, as well as those who are dying in large part all over the United States. So I think we really need to speak to that. I think we need to kind of going on. And Bahia, I wanted you to start with the material that you just read.
Well, we were talking about the fact that we know that 40 to 70% of all of the COVID deaths are African American people. And one of the things we were talking about is when they were talking about people who are high risk, they were talking largely about pre-existing conditions, but not recognizing that racism in itself is a pre-existing condition.
I'm not.
Yes.
Bahia, you are.
So are you. This is so weird.
Am I?
You work for me. I wonder if people can tell us. Can you tell us in the chat if my stream or Dr. DeGrew's stream is
which, or if both of us are coming in and out?
We're trying to see if it's one or both. Anyone?
No. Well, it's working right at this moment, but you keep coming in and out.
You're doing the same thing for me. So I don't know if it's my connection or yours. That's weird.
I don't know.
Oh, they said both. And then someone said, oh, Julie said both. Okay, this is weird. Okay, Julie said mine is good. Someone said mom's. Okay, this is so weird.
So it's mine?
I don't know. Let's see. It says daughter is fine, doctor is not that good.
I didn't even think about
it. Okay, so let's see. Can you, did you text and ask? Okay, yeah, they're saying it's yours, Mom. Mostly it's yours. Okay.
Okay. All right. So I'm wondering if because I'm on this thing here, is this maybe
what are you on?
What's wrong here? I have I'm taking notes from like this little iPad.
Maybe you might need to get off of any internet stuff that's going on there at your house. Be off. So if you're using something else,
okay,
it might be messing with your stuff.
Okay. All right. So we will do something else here. Of course, now I got to figure out how to turn this thing off, which I don't know how to do.
You don't turn the what is it? Okay, so where's the husband, the tech guy? Where's he at?
The tech guy's in the back.
Okay, listen. So just go to the top.
I didn't think they handed this to me. I'll be right back. Talk to Bahia. She's clear anyway.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, I guess I'll stall. Okay, so what I was saying is that when we're talking about pre-existing conditions, when it comes to the coronavirus and looking at how many African Americans, and particularly African American males, are dying as a result of being infected with the virus, that racism itself is a pre-existing condition. Like having Black skin or walking around as Black people, you are dealing with an undue amount of stress that is going to exacerbate any health issue that you might have. And so it's not just if you have diabetes or hypertension, literally just being Black and the stress that comes with that. I think we need to explore that. The other thing we were going to talk about briefly is that we've been struggling with, there are a lot of things that are impacting our community. Are you back?
I'm back, but you're coming in and
still
out.
You. So I wonder if it's your office. Yeah, I wonder if it's the office. Okay. Maybe you should log off. Yeah, log off and come back, and I'll bring you back in.
Okay, I'm coming back. Talk to me.
Come back to us. Okay, let's see. Goodness, I'm telling you, it's always something. The other thing that we're going to talk about today, and Dr. DeGrue will be back soon to talk about, is that, just make sure, yeah, I think she'll pop in. I hope she'll pop in. If she doesn't pop in a couple minutes, then I might have to just restart and bring her back in before we go live. So the other thing we were talking about was that in our community, we have a couple things that are happening. We have a distrust of the government, which is, makes sense. However, I would, encourage us to be paranoid on the side of it's probably worse than they're telling us. Not, I don't believe anything that they say. I'm going to continue to do my life as usual, which was the case with some members of my family, literally kind of saying, I don't believe all that and God has me. And so I don't have to do anything, basically, if it's my time to go kind of mentality. And just exploring with you all kind of the etiology of that thinking, kind of in some ways blind faith, in other ways just distrust of the government and distrust of anything that someone tells you. And then on top of that, looking at just the health disparities, I basically was saying to Mom that the health disparities have continued to exist. We've just sprinkled a little COVID on it and made it worse, right? All of these disparities that have been result of institutionalized and structural racism are now just exacerbated. They've blown up. Okay, I don't see her. Let's see what's happening here. Maybe I need to invite her again. Let's see. I sent her the add the guest, so she should be popping in any moment. Okay, hold on, guys. This is always something. Last week we had no problems at all, and then we come to this. Although she is in a different state now, so let's see. Okay. Let's see. I'm just going to call her and see if she's using the link. You're not coming in with my link, lady. Okay, let's see. Oh my goodness. Anyway, let's see if there's any questions while we're waiting for her. Some people are saying that, well, someone's just saying hi. Hi, Cedric.
Hello, you've reached Dr. Joy DeGrue.
She deleted, she went sent me to voicemail, so maybe she's trying to figure it out. La, la, la. I don't see her popping up. She should be popping up. Well, thank you, Shannon. Anyway, I had a situation. I'll just tell you a quick story since we're waiting on her. She's not calling me or showing up on here. So hopefully, oh, wait. She's coming back. She's coming back. You're back. Oh, she'll be here. There she is. Yay.
Okay. Lord, I'm trying to tell you something.
Okay. Your head is cut off. Okay. Why is your head so low on the screen? Joy, you're glitching again.
What?
You're glitching. And your head is like really, okay, now you're back. Your head was like a little, like you had a screen turtleneck on. Okay. All right. Oh, I'll put you back to this. Is that better?
There we go. Why does it look like I'm a balloon? Anyway, okay, it's all right. It's okay. We're good. We're good now. We're good.
Okay.
And
we're better.
And I'm ready.
You're still glitching, but we'll kind of deal with that. Hold on. You're still glitching.
Turn the phone on. I don't know. Okay. Everything's off in my. But we have thunderstorms where I am, so sometimes.
Oh, maybe that's what's happening. Okay. So anyway, I was just telling everybody, well, just work with it. You're still moving. You're still. I mean, you're a bit better than you were before, a little bit. But we were just talking about. No, it's you. Your connection is glitching. Okay, so listen.
What's going on? This is so crazy.
Your audio is fine. Okay, listen. Your audio.
Okay.
So just keep talking. You might be looking like you're dubbing a movie with.
Okay, so Mish Clark said I need Wi-Fi booster.
Oh.
My audio works. So just don't look at me. Okay. Don't look at me. Listen to me, but don't look at me.
Okay. Okay, so we were just talking about racism being a pre-existing condition, and we were talking about the fact that our community members sometimes, because they don't trust the government in general, that sometimes it has to do with, you know, I'm not going to let them tell me what to do. I don't believe them. I don't trust them. And also, God has me. I have faith. I'm not going to worry about these precautions. So we wanted to kind of bring up some of these issues going on to think about, one, strategies to push the people in your life and environment to be thinking about things in a kind of in real time, but also thinking about maybe asking some of you your thoughts on how do we shift the culture, that culture, and also how do we support one another when we're going through that. Like I had some of those issues in my own family. So how do we deal with that? So that's what I was bringing to the table. What did you want to say about that, Mom?
One of the things that I wanted to talk about, because you're glitching, I can't look at you. Because you're glitching.
Look away.
I'm just not going to. We should have done the whole audio. Although, yeah, I tried to clean up and look better, everything. But anyway.
You look good.
Good. So what I want to really be able to do is talk a little bit about how we begin to deal with some of the stressors that are happening now for us. Now that we know that there are people being put in mass graves in New York, you know, it's really, really bad. And a lot of folks have been asking, you know, so why are we disproportionately, you know, the folks who are dying? Well, we were disproportionately the folks dying before COVID.
Right.
We were disproportionately representing all of those markers around health indicators. We're at the tip of the top every single time. I think what COVID did was it brought everything to the light. It brought, wow, why is this happening? Well, it's always been happening, and people have largely just been kind of ignoring it. It became a subject of study and research, and we've, you know, verified that, oh, this is happening, and then we verified that we verified it, but nothing's been done to change it.
Right.
So we shouldn't be surprised that this is happening now. And, you know, that there's nobody rushing to our aid as it relates to the fact that we've always been disproportionately represented as it relates to health disparities. But I want to get really down to what we need to be dealing with now, because I don't know how far we are in, according to what states you're in, how long you have been sheltering in place, but the tensions are rising. In addition to that, Bahia and I have a family member that's struggling for her life right now as we speak. So this is real stuff. It's real stuff, and it's really hard, and everybody's at a different place in terms of their coping ability and their ability to even wrap their heads around this. Again, you know, I think I was talking to you, Bahia, about the fact that a friend drove up to something, and in front of her was another car. And so she's able to see the person giving the person whatever food they've ordered with no gloves, with no mask. So when she comes up to the window, she says, you know, it's a young African-American girl. And she goes, where are your gloves? Why aren't you wearing gloves? And where's your mask? What's, you know, you, and she goes, I don't do that. Or I'm not wearing it. Or she said something. And then another employee from behind her walks up and goes, he says, well, it's just not a good look. It's not a good look. And she said that she just looked at him and she says, what did you say? I hope the best for you. You know, get a grip. You know, it was so outrageous for her that she just, you know, we're part of a coalition of folks that are trying to work on this, but we definitely have to reach those folks. It says Ohio's about to go crazy. I'm reading some of the notes. Southwest Ohio is jacked. Yeah, you know, I think that we really need to continue to have this conversation because it's ratcheting up. Everything is ratcheting up in terms of what's going on. Do we have all the information, and how come things are moving the way they are, you know? So how do we prepare, right? How do we prepare, and what are some of the things we need to look at?
You know, I was having a conversation with some, I've been on a lot of calls lately because we've been talking about services to communities of color. I'm on a group, early childhood group with 4 or 5 other culture-specific agencies, looking at what's happening in our communities. And one of the things that we all agreed on, and we kind of laughed, was that we are not the ones who are panicking in crisis, right? So one thing that I will say is that there's 2 things that are going on. While we have folks who are saying it's not a good look, and while they're not, there are other people who are saying, and part of that is because we've normalized crisis so much that we don't panic and buy all the toilet paper because something goes wrong, okay? Mm-hmm. People who are panicking are the people who are not used to having to figure out how to stretch resources or collaborate with people, right? And what we have to go back to our community and remind them that we actually have some expertise in this area. We should be actually in the helm of designing intervention, because we know how to make a way out of no way. We've been doing it forever. And so we're not panicking, but when we start to mirror other cultural narratives, dominant white European narrative of scarcity and fear, then we find ourselves in those places. But if we think about the fact that I used to always say, if we had an IQ test for people, it said, hey, you only have rice, beans, and you got to feed 25 people, all of us would figure out how to make that work, because we've had to make that work. So I think that reminding us, and like even with my kids, you know, we're doing life skills class here, right? Learning how to do functional. That's right. Because if you don't know, my son was like, why will I need to sew on a button? You need to learn how to sew on a button, because one day you're going to have a button that pops off and you're not going to just buy a new shirt. You know, we can't start, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like reminding our community that we have been the leaders in these areas. We should actually be at the forefront of designing for ourselves what changes need to be made to keep us healthy through this period of time.
So I'm seeing people wanting to know exactly kind of where I want to go with this in terms of how do we deal with some of the mental health stuff. Again, Bahia is looking at our resource, and we have rich resources, always have culturally in order to maintain and to manage these. So first, to start looking at just because we again are distancing, we are distancing physically, not socially, because our social fabric as a culture is intact. We keep that going on, is whatever that means. So we're literally only distancing, as someone pointed out last time we were on, that is a physical distancing, and not to forget that. What I want to bring up is some of the things that we need to keep going on in our homes. We need to keep up our cultural and our spiritual practices, whatever those are. We need to strengthen relationships while we're there. I mean, there's so often, I'll bet you if I ask anybody looking, that if in your family, there are folks that don't talk to each other. There are people that are mad and haven't spoken to each other. And this is a time to strengthen relationships. We can't afford that anymore. We can't afford that kind of stuff. There's a higher level of need for us to connect. Help people in the home. Give people roles within the home of helping each other. Mm-hmm. And to know that we're not just all going to go to our corners. We're going to come together as a family. Even if we're not all family, if we're all together and this is where we are, we're going to have responsibilities here to each other, not just to cleaning the house or doing this, but doing things for each other. Again, building the relationships, creating a family narrative. Here is where we can begin to tell our stories, the stories that maybe we don't know, to begin to ask important questions about who you are, where you came from. And I think, you know, here you begin to frame things that maybe families don't normally talk about, but we need to, and we need to know. And remember that if we don't pass on that information, it dies to the next generation. They don't have it. So we really need to do that. There is an article I'm going to recommend for you. Now, I can probably put it up on my, I think I can put it up on my webpage, but just that doesn't work because nothing else seems to be working. Let's do this. I'm going to tell you what it is. It's called Families in Psychiatry, Preventing the Intergenerational Transmission. I'm going to repeat it again. Intergenerational Transmission of Trauma. And it's by Allison Herum, Herum. I'm going to repeat the title. Families in Psychiatry, Preventing the Intergenerational Transmission of Trauma. The author, Allison Herum, Herum.
Preventing the what? I'm gonna put it in the notes. Preventing the what? Intergenerational.
The intergenerational transmission of trauma. And I'm going to tell you why I think it's important for you to have that article, because I think there's a lot in that article that speaks to the notion of creating a narrative. It talks about the kind of questions which I think are really important. Relaxation techniques, taking a bath or shower. We talked about, I think, Bahia, you talked about that, listening to music, playing Pictionary as a family, putting together a puzzle, a big puzzle for the family to put together, doing charades, board games, dancing, singing. I think I'm going to be putting out, my husband and I are going to be putting out a short music video. We're going to put out our own.
Are you dancing with your arms like this?
Just for fun. You know, old people dance with their arms up. So here's the other thing. Caution folks that are self-medicating, whatever that medication is, whether it is over the counter, it's prescribed, or whether it's some, you know, recreational stuff, to try to really caution that without shaming, you know, because people are reaching for a way to cope, right? And so we got to appreciate that that might be going on. Using empathy techniques to assess families for stuff like domestic violence, and, you know, families looking at, you may be talking to people that, you know, maybe not all working well, that have a tendency to be kind of violent or just volatile in nature. So you could use these kind of prompts. You know, this is a difficult time for everybody. How's everybody holding up? How you doing? Doing daily texts and emails to friends and family. Also, one of the things that I really want you to do is to really look for these signs. For example, I'm recommending to all the folks that I'm coaching in professionally. So I'm coaching organizations professionally, and I'm saying to them, I want you to do FaceTime as much as possible. However much FaceTime, whether that's on a phone or a computer, whatever folks have. And I know there's a digital divide. I know not everybody has this. I want you to know I know that. But whatever we have that we can do. And I want you to look at folks. Why? Because I want you to assess whether people seem like they're extraordinarily sad, whether they're irritable, whether you hear people yelling or crying or threatening, whether you see dangerous things like guns or, you know, knives or sharp objects. These are things that you want to just be paying attention to when you're dealing with friends and family, that you're FaceTiming. You're looking to see, are they looking like they're going to sleep, if they're even getting any sleep. You know, these are just some things that
interacting with other people in the FaceTime, their children,
right. Also, the other thing that I would do is to help people see where are the folks that you connect with. Make a list of supportive folks that you have, and you're like, who can you call? Who can you talk to? Who can you write if you have to write them? You know, who are those folks? Help with planning. Start planning and strategizing about how to manage your way through this stuff. Because right now, where we all are is we don't know when this is going to be over. And people are at various levels. I mean, I was hearing numbers out of New York that are terrifying. I mean, the numbers that are coming out of New York are really terrifying. In fact, the numbers of people that have been infected is higher than any country, any other country. We have America has the highest number than any other country, and New York in particular is really, really struggling. Why? Because folks, especially the people that, you know, they're burying in mass graves, is, you know, people who are poor, the people who have disconnected from family. So there's no one actually literally there to even claim the bodies, right? And this is, to me, it speaks to another issue that if we had time, and I guess we got all the time in the world now, that we need to talk about. We need to talk about reconnecting. We need to talk about what that looks like, because some of us find it very difficult to communicate. some of us have a difficulty in terms of being really extroverted or introverted. You have people who just don't feel comfortable, right? And so here is a time when we really have to dig in, and we really have to maybe move into an area that we're not used to. And so, I guess my question, everybody, I'm trying to look at things here, and I think that we're at a point where when we start looking at our issues as people, what can we do without anybody else's assistance? And one of the things that we can do is to start taking care of ourselves internally and externally. We can do that. And when we, and I want to set the record really straight. When we start looking at these pre-existing conditions, the pre-existing conditions that African Americans are struggling with are a direct result of oppression, the direct result of being marginalized, the direct result of a history of being traumatized, of being, not having access to just basic necessities. You have to remember, if you go back and start looking at what I consider survival food, folks coming out of the South, even enslaved folks during slavery that were in the fields, that were growing food and growing cotton, whatever else there was, they didn't get to benefit from that.
Right.
They would raise animals and raise crops that they couldn't eat, that they weren't allowed. They would kind of sneak around to the side and create their own gardens, but we literally lived on the scraps, right? And so when you start looking at some of the things, again, that get passed on traditionally. So I would ask anyone here, when I think about my family, I grew up with gardens. My grandmother always had a garden. My father used to fish and hunt. There were things that we kind of did as a family, but there's certain foods that I grew up with that my children didn't grow up with, because I started to realize that there were much healthier, much alternatives to what I grew up with. And it wasn't all bad, but some of it came from whatever they were taught, right? Does that make sense? That you don't question it. It was what grandma made, right? But maybe what grandma made was based on what she grew up with whatever you had there, right? So I think we have to start thinking about those kinds of things as well, if we want to get through this. And the other thing is, when we start talking about, so I'm talking about mental health in terms of a general mental health, but what about people who are suffering from, and there are plenty of African American people who are suffering from clinical diagnoses that have never been treated.
Oh yeah.
Just never received treatment. And so when you're in close quarters with someone who is volatile, I believe it or not, I'm dealing directly with families, including my own, where folks have mental health challenges that are melting down. They're melting down, and the folks in the family don't have the tools, they're not equipped to deal with it. So again, there's all of these layers of what we're dealing with. And again, next week, we're literally going to talk to folks that have, mental health challenges. But I really feel like it's important now to stay in communication, to stay in contact, in connection. It's about connection for me. And I said this last night on another Zoom call, about that if there has ever been a period of time, at least in my history, in my experience, if there's ever been a time that is screaming for us to come together, it is now. Folks are talking about why it is, and there's some things that are going on with the government. I noticed somebody said something about, dealing with a government that you don't feel like you can trust, that has historically harmed us. Once again, what someone has mentioned here, change your diet, eat clean food. I believe that some folks can do that. Some folks.
It's harder because the thing about it is there was a food program at my children's school, and it was Whole Foods was donating all this food. And what I've been doing lately on my Facebook and Instagram has been posting recipes, right? Or processes of food to make that are different. But if you get bok choy, for instance, you grow bok choy, right, Mom?
I do.
But everybody doesn't know what that is, nor would they know how to cook it if you gave them a whole bunch of free bok choy. They go, what is this? And so a lot of the food that was coming, the fresh greens, they were like, you know, they didn't know how to, some of the stuff was like, this is not the stuff that I know. So I'm not going to take it because I don't even know how to cook it. And if I don't know how to cook it, and then the people who are demonstrating how to cook it, it's tasteless and terrible. So, you know, they don't want to eat that either. So I think sometimes also it's thinking about differently about what you have, even making things differently. I think when you are stressed out, it robs you of your creativity in any of the areas you're talking about. Staying connected. People will feel like, I can't, I don't have, I'm not able. And so it's really important to think about what you do have, what you are able to do to kind of help you with the stress. Because if I know every day I can go to 2 neighbors and leave a little positive note, that is me not interacting with people necessarily physically, but doing it something that's going to both make me feel good because I took the time to write the little note and I walked outside, mask on or what have you, to the neighbors and dropped off a note. It's something to keep the connection going. And so there's always some level of control that you have over your life and environment. And I think that we forget that when we're stressed because we're like, I can't do all the things that I normally do. And sometimes the things that we normally do aren't very healthy. I don't sleep much, right? I've been trying to sleep more. It's not really working, but I'm trying to get more rest, you know? Trying to go.
Well, you know, Latif and I, my husband and I have been talking about the fact that we're losing the days of the week. Okay, we're like, it's Monday, it's Tuesday. He said, we ought to just say today, tomorrow, and yesterday, because the actual day of the week doesn't matter anymore.
No.
You know, at least for a lot of us. You
Time
know?
to go to bed.
And I'm looking at a lot of what people are saying here. There's a lot we need to start doing around how we eat and what we eat. And I know that, but let me explain something about that. I can basically drive across America and I can tell you based on the fast food restaurants where I am, the kind of fast food restaurants, right? So, you know, if you're seeing, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Taco Bell, Burger King, you start seeing those that you're moving in and they'll be on every other corner.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you keep going and it's not great food, but now you're moving into Olive Garden, the Red Lobster. It's a different kind of restaurant.
Right.
And these are things that happen. Now, I was arguing because what Black people don't know is you have a right to say, I don't want a McDonald's in so many feet from a school. You can actually do that. We have the right to do that and to question all of this fast food. But then I get pushback from folks that says, I got 5, they say I have 5 children. I work for minimum wage. I'm on Section 8. And when they say I can get a 99 cents meal and I can feed all my children, you see, so, and I get that it's not good food, but, people are surviving.
Right.
And again, so both things are real. Both things are real. Is it good food? Absolutely not.
But also,
when you're faced with those kinds of dilemmas, now again, Bahia, one of the things that my family's been doing, all of us, we've been trading recipes back and forth. Have you tried this? We're trying different food, right? We're going, wow, because you're bored, you eat the same food. So then somebody sends you something new. What else you can do with that, right? And so we're trying to, all of us are trying to cope, but I'm never going to be, I want to be totally transparent. I'm clear. When I had food stamps, let me just tell you, when I had food stamps, I looked forward to my food stamps. And usually, honest to God, when I would get in the line, I would have people, largely white people, that would be all in their feelings because I wasn't buying sugar cereal and white bread. I was buying some good vegetables. And I heard one woman go, I can't even afford that. It's not my fault that you're buying trash. I don't know what your problem is. But even though I'm on food stamps, I'm going to make certain I get the stuff that my kids need and that are nutritious. Right. So I was never one of those people struggling, like I said, struggling just like anyone else. I had a family trying to make it work, trying to figure out how to make it work. But at the same time, I had access in terms of education, and I had access in terms of information from folks that could help me with that. I have a number of friends that are naturopathic physicians. I have folks that, I have people that were always a part of my life. And so that is not what everybody else has. You know, like I said, I was saying, I think last time, you know, I'll talk to people. I went to when I could go to hair salon. We gonna all start looking really different too. But I remember going to a hair salon and listening to the conversation that people were having in the hair salon. Mm-hmm. And I just kept thinking to myself, yeah, I better not say anything. You know, I just better not say anything, because they were saying some of the crazy stuff in the world. And I was thinking, these are big grown-ups, you know, but I'm also recognizing that their exposure, right? Mm-hmm. So what I would deliberately do is start a conversation with the person doing my hair. And I would just broach a whole nother conversation and then start talking about things that I knew. And the next thing you know, the folks ear hustling going, I didn't know that, girl. You know, all of a sudden people were interested. So I can't complain if I'm not going to do anything. Mm-hmm. Right. I gotta do something. And what I'm recognizing, like, and you all know, I say, if people know better, they'll do better. Exactly. And sometimes, like I said, I'm going to the grocery store myself, right? You go into Whole Foods. I couldn't believe it. I went to Whole Foods and I saw a cabbage, right? And you weigh the cabbage. That cabbage was like $8. I'm going for a cabbage. So I started that literally. I grew some cabbage because I was just mad. I just think, I'm going to grow some organic cabbage, because who's going to buy $8 for one little head of
no, and cabbage? It's the same stuff. But even if you buy the stuff that's boxed and you go to those places, they're more expensive, right? The same stuff. Because I've been going to the little small natural food store because I don't want to interact with a lot of people. And I'm like, I'm paying, like, in some cases, even for some oatmeal, you're going to be paying like $3 or $4 more. So it's kind of like if you go there to get the fresh vegetables, right? Then if you want to get the other stuff that you'd get, you're going to be upcharged on all those things. But I do think that.
But tell them about what the little boy said who said he ate lots of vegetables.
Oh, okay. So this is a terrible. It's not really a funny story. It's terrible. So there's a friend of mine who's a nutritionist, and she's working with a couple of families, and one of the children that she was working with was severely overweight. And so she's like, so do you eat fruit? Do you eat vegetables? And he said, oh, I love vegetables. I eat vegetables all the time. And she said, what's your favorite vegetable? And he said, hot dogs. So my point is that, again, part of it is also not, and this is the thing that we have to be careful about. The reason why I think it's important that you're saying that you're here talking about the things that people can do is that sometimes it's not even what you're saying, it's who is saying it, right?
That's true.
Trust you.
That is true.
They may listen to what you have to say. When I'm talking to families that we serve, they know that I'm there for them, so they might listen to what I have to say. But as you know, there are a lot of people who have an air about these things. That's true. So yes, there's a lot of educated, highfalutin Black people who are like, you should eat vegan, you should be, and nobody wants to hear that, because what comes along with that, even though that is a really good advice in some cases, it comes with a level of superiority that is happening in our community. Also, there's this vast divide economically of who gets to get the good information and who can you trust and who you think you're better than me, and that's why you're eating kale chips all the time, or it doesn't go along with the information. So I think sometimes also, while we're sitting here saying, people there's no reason for them to eat that. They don't have to, part of that, there's an air of you've come into some new knowledge, or you've now developed this new understanding, and now you're going to beat everybody else down with that new information instead of maybe making some suggestions.
Somebody talked about, you only have one body, you better eat that $8 cabbage. But here's the thing, the only thing I'm saying about the $8 cabbage is, it's exorbitant for someone who is just trying to work with
it. Doesn't make sense if you're trying to stretch it out, because also when you have fresh vegetables, you have to eat them soon, organic vegetables soon. You can't stop them. And so what happens is I've had that myself, where I'm like, get a lot of vegetables and realize I don't have enough meals to pair. Like I end up juicing them and freezing them because I have too many. So when you start thinking about we don't want to shame our people, I look at it and I'm like, we have survived, and we are, as you always say, extraordinary people considering all that we've been through with no help, really. So how do we then just inspire people? My thing is, if you're working with a family, we talked about breathing exercises last week, and I said, if you go and you watch, kind of the uppity folks who go, you need to practice breathing. They're going to say, get out of here with your breathing. But if you say, get your kids in a room and play a game where you light a candle and everybody breathes and you are really, really careful not to blow out that candle. Everybody's going to focus on the candle. And then it's a game, but you're controlling their breathing. You're helping them focus. You're doing all of those things, but you're not putting all this kind of intellectual stuff around it. It's just a game that's going to help your children feel comfortable. It's just something that you can control. Yeah.
And the key here, what we have to also remember, just really honestly about each other and about this struggle. I remember going to Rikers. I went to Rikers Island, and it was a young man who, I was dealing with the youth, going to Rikers. You all read my book. You know how I responded. It was, I had never experienced anything like that. It really was an island of people of color that were locked up, men, women, and children. It broke my heart. And the numbers were outrageous. And I remember meeting this young man, really bright young man, who he was an athlete. He had everything, ahead of him. And his parents lost their jobs. He was out there trying to make money. And he was out there trying to, he was working at a fast food restaurant, and the guy on the corner was selling drugs. And the guy on the corner was making stupid money, twice as much as him, and that he could come home with in a month. And he kept looking at those two things. He was not a drug user. He was not a bad kid. He was not, involved in anything criminal. He was just looking, he was doing the numbers. And he was looking at that, and he said, and that's the only reason, is because I realized that I could actually sell drugs and still go to school and help feed my family, help his mom and his dad. And so it was like not a good decision, but he looked at me, and I remember this look that he gave me. He says, so now I have this, I have this case against me. You got a felony, right? Mm-hmm. He goes, what am I going to do when I get out? What am I going to do? Right. And I'm looking at, again, it's really easy for us to pontificate, but, I have family members that serve sentences in prison. I went to visit folks in prison. I have folks that died as a result of drug addiction, so I'm not, I'm never going to be one of those people that say to folks, this is what you need to do. I'm going to accept you where you are. And remember, that's where it is. It's about where are you and where can we help move from here? Not from where I am, from where you are. How can I help you? Let me give you a case in point. I'm going to give you a case in point. There's a young girl that had been gang raped. She had been gang raped. How did it happen? She literally got off the bus at the wrong stop with a red coat on. That's all she did. And she ended up getting gang raped. So I get a phone call 2:00 in the morning from a friend of mine saying, Joy, we need your help. Because all the police did was just reassault her. What were you doing there? Why were you there? It was a mess what they did. So I end up meeting her parents. And at the time that this is happening, I have a bachelor's degree at that point, and no clinical degrees, nothing. I have a bachelor's degree, working on my master's degree. So I get there, and based on what happened, they assigned her, a court person. They assigned her all these folks, and so the parents ended up, as a result of this case that came down, the rape case, they ended up getting her a mental health person, an MSW, not an MSW, an LCSW. That's a licensed social worker. So she's in a situation. She sits down with the social worker, the white social worker, this little 14-year-old girl, and she starts asking her all the questions about her life. Has she ever had an issue before this rape happened? And she mentions that she had been molested by someone in her family. But the social worker at that point stopped the little girl and said, I'm sorry, I'm a mandatory reporter, and I'm going to have to report that. Now, what she didn't know is that the issue had been addressed. The person had been confronted, legal steps were taken, but she didn't wait. That little girl attempted suicide later on that night, at which point her parents fired her. The only reason why I couldn't work with her is because I wasn't licensed. So I couldn't technically work with the hospital or anybody. So they have me working, they want me to work with the girl. Well, all the institutions involved were really trying to, really keep me out of it for the most part. So I said to the parents, I said, listen, I'm gonna always be here for you, just let me know. So they then fall into the regular, folks they got to deal with that are handed to them. So what happens with this little girl, I want to stretch this out so I can help you understand how I helped her. But I wasn't able to help her then. I didn't have access. This little girl who was a straight A student, I'm not making it up, a straight A student became a D student. She also became sexually promiscuous, not uncommon. She had been harmed. We all know what happens. She ends up dropping out of school. She gets pregnant with twins. She gets pregnant with twins by an older man who's a pimp. He beats her. It's horrible. I mean, the story is horrible. So at this point, she's no longer in those systems. Family reaches out to me and I said, let me work with you. So I sat down with her and I said, tell me how you want me to help you. She says, I never want to have sex with him, which means that every time she has had sex with this man, she's been raped every single time, right? And she's got the twins, his twins, and all. It's complicated. So I said, okay. I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think in yourself. I want you to begin to meditate and to concentrate on your right to feel whole. I want you to keep telling yourself that you have the right to feel whole, to feel safe, almost like a mantra that she had. And she started feeling better. So each time I would meet with her, I said, now what I want you to do is I want you to tell him no. Now I got to be careful because this is a violent man. Right. I said, I want you to tell him no. I said, but listen to me. You'll probably have sex with him, but I want you to just experience that of telling him no. So she came back. She goes, I was really, really scared. I was really scared. But I told him no, and then he kind of threatened me and stuff. And I did it, but I told him no. I said, well, okay, you told him no. We celebrated that. Right. So then I told her, I said, I want you to figure out a way to try to figure out how to delay this happening, because now I think she's about 18 now. So I'm working with her and I just, try to delay it. And she goes, I told him I wasn't doing it. I didn't feel good. I did all that. And it was like, he was mad and everything. And then, a whole long time later, I had sex and she said, but I had, I said, but how long did you stop him? I said, oh my goodness, we celebrated her failure. I celebrated it with her until finally it reached a point where she could say no. She stopped him. She stood up to him, I helped her get a restraining order. She got full custody of her own twins and she moved on. But I need you to understand that I celebrated with her failure. Right. And so sometimes the help doesn't look like what some of the comments I'm hearing. The help doesn't show up like that. It's not black and white like that. And I needed her to love herself through that. The only chance she had was to love herself. The only chance her children would have is for her to learn to love herself, for her not to be shamed. Right. So I had to help her celebrate even in her failure. And so what I'm saying to you is I'm not mad. It's emotional for me because for so many years, you work with people where they are. You don't judge them. You don't shame them. You don't say, I know, and you don't know. Right. And I'll tell you the biggest lessons I've had in my life have come from people that are unlettered, people whose names nobody knows. Greatest lessons, the greatest knowledge and gifts that I've gotten, Dr. Joy, have been from those people who will never be known. Mm-hmm. But I think we have to be careful because we adopt this kind of Western linear perspective of how we even help, how we help.
not about people not perceiving our children as being innocent, right? We don't perceive our community as being innocent or worthy of love and compassion. And so we're the hardest on our own people when they deserve the most care. I told that to my husband when he was training. I said, you don't yell at the white boys when you're playing basketball. You don't yell at them. You don't call them names. And these Black boys may have a really harsh environment at home. And it's the only time they get to be around other Black males in a positive environment, and they can't get any compassion from you guys, you know? And so it's one of those things where he said, I don't yell at my, you know, I never yell at my team guys anymore, but it was my kids anymore. But I think it's that mentality where it's like, shame on you for not knowing better. And it's just like, you know, my favorite client that, you know, we won't name her names, you know, she ended up being a stripper, doing all this stuff, right? You know, and I would tell her, you know, but you didn't use drugs. These are all things that you've been able to do. You know, we got to get you out of the hole. And we'd crack a joke about it, you know. And she's like, I tried to work at US Bank, but the money, because comparison was just terrible. So we would laugh, and she slowly moved her way out of there. She became a business owner, you know, because it's one of those things where it's like people have to feel good in order to gain confidence. You can't feel good if somebody's constantly shaming you, you know.
Right. And so, you know, the other piece, you know, we make some assumptions. I talk about a young woman in my book whose name I've never actually said her real name, but I use another name in the book. But this was a young girl who, she was amazing. All I can tell you is she was brilliant. I met her she was in 7th grade. It was a career day. And I was just one of the people there, and they were, of course, you know, running them through all these people, and you too can be an attorney, you too can be, you know. And so I'll never forget, there was this white man who had come in. I don't even know what his position was, but he was talking to this group of 7th graders, you know, about their career choices. And each one of them, I'm going to be a basketball player. I'm going to be a basketball player. I'm going to be a star. I'm going to be a singer. I'm going to be and he comes to this one little girl, and she goes, I want to be an engineer. Now, all the kids start laughing, all of her friends, and you could tell she's a little embarrassed. And then the man goes, well, you know, you have to be really, really, really good in science, and you got to be really good in math. And she goes, I get A's in math and science. I get straight A's in math and science, right? And so he goes, oh, okay. Well, immediately I'm looking at this little girl, and I'm going, my goodness. So I started to talk to her. So she asked me if I would be her mentor. And I said, of course, I'll be your mentor. So I started working with her. And she goes, you think I could go to college? Because no one in her family had ever gone to college. I said, of course you could go to college. Matter of fact, with the grades you have, you could go to any college with a full scholarship. You could do it. Right. She goes, really? She goes, because I was thinking of going to the local junior college. I mean, that's as far as she could ever think. And then this is a young girl who, you know, it was in the city of Portland, had never been across the river. She just the bridge across the river. She'd never been over this. She only lived in her space, in her hood, and that was it. But she really, I mean, this girl was exceptional, right? She lost a full year of school. Got pregnant, lost the baby, and lost a full year of school. Went into the school, a year lost, tested right back. Took a test, and that's how bright she was. Just amazing. So she gets pregnant again, and I start realizing that she's kind of sabotaging. She's sabotaging. And then I realized that part of that is because of me, because I'm telling her all that you can be. And she's thinking, you know, you're asking me to be an island by myself. I've never, you know, and so I started to back up a little bit. And so I reached out to her mom. Her mom was working 16 hours a day, raising, you know, 4 girls. And they were all bright. Every single one of those young girls were bright. And she says, I really want my girl to go to college. She goes, I really do. If you could help me, I said, I will do everything that I can. So I ended up, you know, financial aid forms. Anybody that goes to college knows if you can fill out the financial aid forms, right, you can go to college. Lord, college is not nearly as hard as a financial aid form. So the financial aid forms turn in. I get all of the fee waivers for the application process. I get all of those things, right? So I'm really excited. I go and I said, so, have you, what schools have you applied to? And she says, well, my mom, we haven't, she didn't fill out the forms. And I went, what? Right? Because, there's a deadline. So I go to the house, knock on the door, and there is the package, the financial aid package. It's been opened. Nothing's been done. So I come in the house and I'm trying to figure out what happened. And somewhere in the conversation, I realized that her mom can't read and understand the forms. She didn't understand them. And they weren't going to dare humiliate their mom.
Right.
So I came in and I said, you know what? Listen, and it's true. I mean, the financial aid forms and all that stuff, it's a challenge. I said, trust me. I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to walk you through everything. And I read every single question. I read every single thing. And she gave me the answers and we filled it out together without me ever acknowledging that she couldn't read it. Long story short, that young woman, I remember her saying to me at the end of it all, she gets accepted into college and she actually goes to school across the river. And she said, they wouldn't let me grow. She says, no one, her friends, none of them would let her grow. Right. She said, and I had to leave them in order to grow, in order to be my full self, because part of what she was holding back was a fear of losing everyone. Right. And so I'm realizing a big lesson for me, a big lesson in, and again, not knowing why. And she was never going to tell me that her mother couldn't read and that her mother couldn't understand the forms. She was never going to tell me that. And at the same time, I had to have the presence of mind to be able to help in such a way that nobody felt shame, that nobody felt humiliated. And she went on to get a master's degree in math, right? And then she actually moved away. She went back east somewhere. And I talk about her a little bit in my book, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help us love each other. I'm trying to help us be kinder, to be sensitive, to be patient. And this is a time in our history as human beings, as world citizens, to embrace each other in the best way we know how. And whether or not, that is, like I've been seeing people who are sheltering in place, there's the reason why I was saying my husband and I are getting ready to do our little routine and put it online is because people are doing stuff like that. They're taking their favorite song and they're dancing to it, or they're lip syncing, and then they're sending it to people, as a way of saying, we're still here. We're still here. We're still us. And just to some levity, to lift the heaviness. And so this is a time when we do need to make that reach. And like I said, when it comes to people in your home, hold them a little tighter, love them a little more.
Like you said, and also like practicing. When you're getting overwhelmed with these children, a lot of folks are saying how they're so frustrated, but the whole idea is lighting up for people. You talk about that a lot, lighting up for your kids. When you see them, when I'm working and I have so many things I'm doing, I have a furrowed brow all the time. I'm like focused and I'm concentrating, and I'll call my kids, hey, come here for a second. And they're like, am I in trouble? And I realize it's just the way I'm looking. I'm not, and I have to kind of relax my face and have some joy because I love them so much, and to be able to kind of project that. And this time has given me some time to just sit. My daughter loves when you play with her hair, right? Her scalp, braids, anything. And so she wants to watch a movie with me and, oh, can you please play with my hair? Which really means she wants to fall asleep, right? And so there's these little moments that I'm enjoying that slow me completely down and make me just completely present with them. And that's the thing that I think that all of us, and especially I think Black women, we are always keeping everything together, moving, keeping everything together. And then taking that time to just sit and be, like you said, I'm teaching a dance class on Thursdays. It's free if you guys want the Zoom link. I have a dance class that I do Afrofusion on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time. and we have a great time. It's really focused on enjoying yourself. It's not trying to get every move down perfectly. And the joy that comes from that has been such a wonderful gift for me. I mean, selfishly, I get so much from that, just that interaction and people asking, can we try it again? Or let's go 3 more times. And I think there's a lot of ways right now that we can, even if it's, like I said, writing a note or a letter or a thoughtful text, thoughtful call, thinking of you. There are things that we can control that we don't, and again, we just got, like you said, we just have to be kinder to each other, give people a little bit more room,
and be patient with yourself. We're all making missteps, and we are all, trying to react and respond and to hold hope in our beings when we don't know what's going on. And then we don't trust what we hear. We don't, and I really do get that. There are a lot of conspiracy theories floating around. There's a lot because, again, as African American people, and I know our time is kind of up, but as African American people and people of color in general, yeah, we can actually be delusional. We could be paranoid. We could have schizophrenia. We could be bipolar. We could have severe depression, and there could still be somebody following us. Okay, that's the problem. I may be paranoid, but in my experience, I also have substantial experience that people are following me and wishing me to do me harm.
Right.
So when you look at that and you realize we got to find a balance. We cannot be so afraid and so paranoid that we actually cease to grow. And the last thing I wanted to say, there is, I talk about what we have, there's something called learned helplessness, and I talk about that in my course. And learned helplessness, did I mention this? I did. I do this stuff so much, I never know who I say it to. But what learned helplessness came out of research with animals originally, and one of these tests that they did on learned helplessness is they put some dogs in a little caged area, fenced area, and they would turn on a red light and they would electrify whatever part of the fence, that fenced area, the dog was in, and the dog would immediately run over to the other area because they would feel the shock. Well, what they were trying to do is condition the dog to move without the stimulus, without the shock, by just when the light comes on, right? So eventually the dog would move if the light came on, even though there wasn't that reinforcing shock. So it's conditioned response. Great. Then they wanted to do another experiment. Of course, these are horrific experiments they're doing, but they're doing another experiment where they just turn the light on and don't shock the dog. Sometimes turn the light on and shock the dog. Shock the dog whether the light on is on or off, right? This is what they started doing. What do you think the dog did? The dog would lie down and stop moving altogether, because what the dog has experienced is learned helplessness. In other words, no matter what I do, right, it's not going to change the outcome either way. And human beings learn helplessness as well. Especially if I give this analogy, and I will end with this one, but let's just say you have a door. Wherever you are, look to where the nearest door is in wherever you are. And let's just say for your whole life, anyone that walked towards that door in your world was beat down or killed. Anyone that went to the door, that's what would happen. Well, then time passes, nobody's at the door. Yet the people don't go out the door. These are people that don't go out the door. People say, why don't you go out the door? I ain't going out the door. There's nothing out there anyway. And they start making reasons why they're not going out the door. Not only is there no one at the door is open. They still won't go out the door. They'll go, only these kind of people go out the door. You don't know what's out there. All of a sudden they start making up reasons why they can't go out the door. So then what people do, and this is what Western, kind of linear Europeans, well, let's do a research study on why the people ain't going out the door. Right. Well, we actually did a survey, and we sent a survey out, and we asked, and then we did a survey of the survey to see if the survey was right. Right. And I'm looking at, this is kind of how we've looked at it, because these people have what is known as learned helplessness, but we also have learned self-efficacy. Right? Learn self-efficacy. You learn helplessness, you can learn efficacy. So I don't go over there and go, tell me why you're not going out the door. I'm not gonna do that. I'm going, could you do me a favor? Will you hold my hand? You trust me? Yeah. And then I walk them out the door. Instant self-efficacy.
Right.
Instant. Because then what happens is we walk out the door and the person goes, wow. And then some of the people that are in the room go, I just saw Miss Joy go out the door, and I saw Margaret go out the door. Well, maybe if they went out the door, right, I can go out the door, because that's learned self-efficacy. If you can do it, I can do it too. But if you're my hero and you won't go out the door, I'm not going out the door either. So sometimes it's not about getting too cerebral about this. Sometimes it's just taking people by the hand and walking them out the door. Sometimes that's what's needed. And all of a sudden they're like, because just think about a time in your life when you just didn't want to do something, you didn't want to do it, and then you went, I really like that. Lord, I really enjoy my kicking and screaming. Didn't want to go and do it. So nice. We have to appreciate that sometimes it's really simple. Sometimes we have to go with people on that journey. We have to be willing to do that. We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to do a study of the study. We don't have to do no research on the study. Sometimes we just need to walk people through. And that's what a lot of my life has been, in both professionally and personally, is being willing to get shoulder to shoulder and walk with people. Sometimes that's the answer. No words at all. Sometimes. So
we got to say a shout out to our Rochester crew. We have to say hi to Jerome and the Rochester folks who are doing amazing work. Got to shout out to the Rochester crew. This has always been fun.
Yeah, I'm Patrice Anderson. I see you out there. Oh my goodness.
Fun here. All kinds of folks. We really appreciate you guys taking this time with us. You know, we really want to design this space to be a place where you can directly connect with Mom, Dr. DeGrew, and be able to get some insights from her. And, you know, we have a lot of these conversations with one another. I am, of course, blessed to have her as my mom and my mentor and my guide. But also, I think I add a few things to her, little tidbits. But we appreciate that so many people are interested in these conversations, and we want to do our part to try to, you know, spread some hope and some insight with some actual practical ways to do things. You know, it's not just talking. We want to make sure people have things that they can practice. So we appreciate you all.
Always. And, you know, again, by between now and next week, who knows what's going to happen, you know, but I know a lot of you out there have loved ones. You maybe have lost people to COVID-19. And what I say is, you know, whatever practices you have, whether those are spiritual practices, whether those are things that you do as a family together, but to really start, you know, holding fast to those things that have been helpful in bringing you up and out of so many other things, and because we need that strength now more than ever, and to realize that there are probably a lot more people there, and I have to believe that there are a lot more people that want connection and want peace and want what's good than those that don't. And, you know, like I said, you know, it's all up to us. If you're gonna, you know, like they say, if you pray, when you pray, African proverb, when you pray, move your feet, because it means that you got to act, you got to do something. This takes action, you know, and not just lip service. So, you know, hopefully, and again, I'm looking, I don't know when we're going to be out of this, but I'm looking to start the podcast in June, and it'll in force. I'm going to start. I've actually got the equipment. I've actually had a tutorial.
Look for it. It's going to be the Be the Healing podcast with Dr. Joy, and that's going to be in June. So stay tuned for that. Also,
and the equipment is going to work. Okay.
Okay. How about that? Yes. But you know what? It won't matter if you don't have good internet connection. You have equipment.
Somebody told me get a boost.
Yeah, there's something also called a.
Somebody already gave me some.
Yeah, it's a repeater.
Anyway, really, the people taking care of it are professional people.
Okay, so that's good. So they'll hook you up. We'll be back on Wednesday. We had to move it to Friday this week because we were trying to get people to do the BET Town Hall on Wednesday. But we'll be back next Wednesday, 5:30, 8:30 Eastern.
And we're going to be talking specifically about mental health issues, developmental disabilities.
We're going to have a guest next week.
And we'll have a guest. If we can get the stuff to work. What can I tell you?
Stuff works. Your internet is trash. You got to figure that out.
Hey, you know, what can I
get
not my fault. Do with me. I'm sheltered in place. It's not like I can go somewhere.
All right. Love you, everybody. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.